Hey y'all, Ann here, and I am going to be doing something a little bit different in this video. This is totally spontaneous, but I do enjoy making books, and I got up this morning, my husband had finished off his cereal, and we buy these cereal boxes at Costco, and they're super heavy duty. So this is not just your typical thin cardboard box, but you can tell like it's heavy. So I thought, I'm not going to throw that in the trash. I could use that for book board. So I'm going to take this box and I'm going to show you how you can use this to make a small hardback book. And I decided while I'm doing it, I might as well go ahead and prep a little book for my By the Well devotional for next month. Since we get the sneak peek on the thank you card that they send us in our kit, it kind of gives us an idea of what our colors are going to be. And of course, we have fall colors next month. Sorry, I just noticed my camera shaking because I've got my stand too close to my table. Anyway, I decided I'm going to go with the fall colors. And so I love handmade paper. So this is the paper. Beautiful. This is the paper I'm going to use for the cover. And for my pages, I just tore out some pages from my small mixed media journal. So I'm just using paper, mixed media paper for that. And it was a journal that I had almost used up. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to pull the paper out of it because I don't pick it up that often anymore. I have another one that I'm using. I will be using book binding thread and of course a book awl and a tapestry needle. Tapestry needles have a larger eye in them. I'll be using some wax to wax my thread, and I will be using PVA book glue. And other than that, I will use some solid color cardstock for the inside of my covers, inside of my front and back cover. I haven't picked out a color yet, but I'll be using that. So those are the basic supplies. If you want to follow along in this video and learn how to recycle a box into a book using simple things like paper and thread. And you can use any paper for your cover. You could even use fabric. You don't have to use paper. If you want to use fabric and you have fabric scraps, you can use that. So come along and let's make a book out of some recycled cardboard. Okay, so I have the paper that I took out of my little mixed media sketchbook. And of course it has all these little edges. So rather than pull those on the perforation, it's a lot cleaner if you just go ahead and use your paper trimmer and trim all of those off. So go through and trim any edges if you're using paper that you pulled out of a spiral notebook. I'm letting these pile up on the side because I am not going to throw those away. I sped this up just to try and get through this. So these little scraps, I am going to save those because I can use distress ink and I can ink those up, or I can also lay them down like a stencil. Now you're going to want to score your paper. So I'm putting my scoring blade in my Fiskars trimmer, and you're going to score each of your sheets right in the middle. So whatever size paper you decide to use, you're just going to find the middle and put that score line. And then we're going to be folding those right on the score line. And that's going to give us our first set of pages for our book. So go through, score all of them, and then go ahead and fold all of those. And as I said, these individual sheets are called your book pages. Now we're going to make signatures. You can use as many as you want. I used only 3 pages to make each signature. My paper is mixed media paper, so it's a little bit heavy. So I don't want to use more than 3 in each one. However, if you are using a very lightweight drawing paper, you could use more. Now we have to prepare our signatures. So what you do is you lay each signature on top of all the others so that you have a stack. And then once you've stacked your signatures, you're going to mark where your binding thread is going to go. So you're putting the marks for where the holes are going to go in your book. I usually like to start on the left and the right, and I like to come in at least a 1/2 inch from each edge. You can come in more if you want to. And then I mark where the middle is. Now on this particular book, I'm putting 4 holes. So I marked a 1/2 inch in from each edge, and then I came in 1.5 inches and put my other holes. So my pencil marks are now marked for 4 holes in my signatures. The next thing that I have to do is I have to mark all my signatures, and I want to make sure that my holes are in exactly the same place on every signature. One of the best ways to do this is to use a right angle. It can be a piece of heavy cardstock. It doesn't have to be a triangle, but the triangle has nice firm support, and I have one, so that's what I use. You're going to make sure they're stacked nice and even, top to bottom, and then you're going to lay your stack on the table and press down firmly with your hand so that they don't move. Line your triangle or your straight edge up with the pencil mark that you made on the top signature, and then you're just going to run the edge of your pencil right along the edge. And what that's going to do is put a mark on the edge of every single signature. And it's actually going to mark right on the fold line because you're putting your straight edge up against the fold line. This is the easiest way to mark signatures and make sure that everything is perfectly lined up. Templates are wonderful, and I've used templates in the past, but the problem with templates is as you move them from one signature to another, you can always get just a little bit off. So if you mark this way on your signatures, then you're going to know that your mark is in the same place as long as your signatures are all lined up. Okay, then you're going to take your book awl or an ice pick, or some people use a thumbtack, whatever you might have, and you're going to put the holes through each individual set of signatures. So this is 3 pages. Remember, 3 pages make up my signature. So I open them, I unfold it, and I lay it face down, and that little tiny pencil mark is showing, so I can put my awl right on the pencil line, and you'll notice that I lay it down kind of sideways to get the point right on the pencil mark, and then I lift it up. And then I go through a second time, and all is tapered, so you can make the hole very small or you can make it a little bit wider in diameter. You're going to do that with every signature. So you just want to go through and punch your holes through every signature. And as long as you stay right on that pencil line, your holes will be neatly lined up so that when you go to thread your book together, they'll thread together nicely. Okay, now it's time to use that cereal box that started this whole project this morning. The first thing I'm going to do is take my X-Acto, and I'm going to cut right along the fold lines on the box so that I can flatten it out. I could have gone ahead and opened the bottom of the box, but even in doing that, I still would have had to open the sides of the box up. And so rather than risk breaking fingernails, I just decided to use the X-Acto knife for all the edges. Sometimes it takes more than one pass. This cardboard is a nice sturdy cardboard, but the corrugation is not so thick that it has large air pockets, which makes it a little bit flimsy. So it's just nice and sturdy. It's not quite as heavy as bookboard, but it's not flimsy like your typical cereal box. So it's good for using for personal bookmaking. I don't know if you'd want to use it to resell journals, but I think if you're selling them as recycled, that'd be fine. Measure your signatures. I just measured those because I wanted to find out how wide I needed my cardboard. So the first thing I did was measure my signature top to bottom, and I'm just going to put a little mark so that I can cut my cardboard down and get it to the size that I need for the height of my book. So again, I'm using my straight edge just to keep my knife from slipping, to make a nice straight cut. A couple of passes to get that cardboard to loosen up. Before you move your straight edge, it's always good to check and make sure that it's loose. I had a couple little spots there that weren't quite all the way through, so I had to go back again. Okay, that piece I don't need. Now what I'm going to do is measure the width of my signatures so that I know how wide to cut my 2 cover pieces. It is important to note that I made the height of my cover, the book height, 1/4 inch taller than my signatures, and I made the width of my cover 1/8 of an inch wider than my signatures. My signatures and my cover will be flush on the binding edge, but on the other 3 sides, I want my cover to stick out 1/8 inch beyond my pages, and that protects my pages inside my book. So by making the cover 1/4 inch taller, that gives me 1/8 inch top and bottom extra, and 1/8 inch wider gives me the 1/8 inch on the open side of the book, because on the flush side of the book, I don't need that extra space. So again, I just used my X-Acto knife and my straight edge, and I got those 2 pieces cut, and that gave me the book board, or the cover board, for my cover. So picking up this cereal box off the counter this morning started this whole project. So now you can see if I put my signatures inside the cover, you can see that I have just a tiny bit of space on the edges, and that's all I need. And so now that we have that done, it's time to actually start putting the cover on the book. So this is some hand-painted paper that I picked up at an arts and crafts show from a gal that does hand-painted papers, and I just think it's lovely, and it's got beautiful fall colors on it. So I'm not worried about measuring for this part. I'm just basically laying my cover down, and I'm going to go ahead and cut out the section that I need. I'm starting right at the corner edge because I don't want to waste any of this gorgeous paper. So I'll just lay my pieces down, and then I'll just go ahead and cut out the section that I need for both the front and the back cover of my book. And so to do that, I'm just going to make sure that I have space all the way around. And you want to note that in between the 2 pieces in the middle, I want to make sure that I have even extra space, because remember, that gap in between the 2 pieces of cardboard is actually enough for 2 pieces, which means it needs to be bigger than the space that I leave around the perimeter, okay? So now that I've cut it, all I have to do is fold it in half, and I'll know that I have equal amounts of paper for both my front and my back cover. So if I just fold it in half and put that crease in, I can take my scissors and just go ahead and cut that in half. Okay. All right, and that little stain on the other side is not, the paper's not torn there. It kind of looks like it in the video, but actually that's just some of the paint stain from when the paper was painted, because this is hand-painted paper. All right, and I just love these fall colors. They're so beautiful. I'm going to have a hard time deciding which side is the front and the back, because both pieces of paper are so different. Okay, so just kind of decide, if you're using recycled materials, which side you're going to use. This is the PVA glue and a glue brush. And these 2 particular items are made for bookbinding. You can use a regular brush like this one. Make sure it's an old brush, because once you put glue in a brush, you're probably never going to get all of it completely out. So I would never use a brush that I use for painting for gluing. I always try to use a separate brush for glue. So any old brush you have is fine. Make sure it's an old one. And if you're going to use it for glue, put a piece of tape on it or write on it with a Sharpie or something, just so you know that that's your glue brush and you don't use it for painting or anything else in the future. I like to put my glue in a little paint pot like this. And then, because I'm just doing the cardboard backing right now, I don't really need an underpaper because I have my cover paper laying underneath of it. And basically just spread that glue out. You don't want it to be real thick. You just want a nice even coat across the back. And then I'm going to make sure I center it. I'm just eyeballing it. And then I'm going to rub it down really good. And I'm using a speedball roller. This is a printmaking roller, but you can use, it's a brayer. You can use anything that you want. If you do it with your hand, that's fine. You just want to make sure you don't have any bubbles in there and that it's down nice and smooth. The next step is you're going to take the corners and you're going to fold those so that you have a little right angle there. Okay, that corner should be just pointing directly into the center. And you're just going to fold all those corners, and I just sped this up to do both of them at the same time. And here's where I realized I need a piece of cover paper underneath because I don't want glue all over my work table. So I'm just going to brush it on the corners, and then you'll see I'm laying it down and I'm just kind of bending against the cardboard because I want to make sure that that edge is nice and tight. If I lay it down and fold the paper, there's a chance that my fingers are not going to crease the paper right up against the edge of the cardboard. So as I go through this, you'll notice that each time that I fold an edge, I tip the cardboard up, and I'm actually using the edge of the cardboard to put the crease in the fold because it is a fairly small fold. I would say that this fold is probably just under 1/2 inch. I wouldn't definitely go any smaller than that because you don't want to have a hard time turning that edge over. You want to make sure it sticks down really good. And you also are going to put a cover page over top of this. And you don't want your cover page to be too close to the edges of your book cover. So I would say, just plan to give yourself a 1/2 inch fold over. If you want to do a little bit more, you can. Some people don't like to have too big of a bump underneath the edge of the cover. You will see a little bit where the fold is, just the impression. And I do the entire corner. Some people will cut a piece off of the corner on their covers when they fold their corners over. I have not had great success with that. Sometimes it's hard to fold over. Sometimes I end up with some of the board showing. And so here it looks nice and neat because my corner's folded and tucked. My edges are folded nice and neat. And everything's nice and tight on there. So just go ahead and do both pieces at the same time. It's easiest if you think of it assembly line because you've already got the glue and everything out. And again, I'm folding up so that I can get that crease nice and tight. Be real careful not to lay your beautiful cover on top of any glue that's on your cover paper. So you'll see that I always wipe the edges, and I often will wipe glue off the cover paper as well. You can rub the glue off your fingers, but most important, do not lay your beautiful cover, whether it's fabric or paper, whatever, don't lay it down in your glue. So keep turning your cover paper, your paper that catches the glue underneath. You want to keep turning it to a different side or a different edge so that you're not getting wet glue on your cover. And here I'm just finishing up this last edge, getting that nice and folded down. Take your time. You'll see that I'm kind of going slow with my fingers. It's not worth rushing. If you want to have a nice looking cover and you want it to be professional looking, don't just try to slap it together. One thing about bookbinding is that you do need to take your time. You can make junk journals and all kinds of really fun stuff. And I love doing that. And sometimes, depending on the type of junk journal you're doing, you don't have to worry about if it's perfectly straight. Doesn't matter. You can just throw it together and it's not a big deal because that's the style. But on this particular journal, I want my edges to be nice and crisp and straight. So this is my cover cardstock, and it is a cardstock. This is not a thin weight paper. I recommend that you use a heavier cardstock. You don't want it to be ultra thick. Like cardstocks, you'll notice when you kind of wiggle them, they make noises. You don't want it to be that real heavy, thick paper, but you do want it to be a nice professional quality cardstock, and put that on the inside. Now this is a recycled journal, so when I say professional, you can take colored scrapbook paper if you want and do the inside because this is a little recycled journal. But I would say lean towards the cardstock scrapbook paper and not the real thin, like there's the really thin one-sided paper and then there's the cardstock paper. So go towards the cardstock paper. Right here you'll see how I'm leaving an 1/8 inch on the edges. So I don't want this paper to go all the way to the edge. The reason for that is if you take your cover paper all the way to the edge, it's going to take wear and tear because we, open our covers with our fingers. If you have it right on the edge, then that cover paper is going to get hit a lot. And then it's going to start to get tattered along there, and you don't want it to do that. So you want to give yourself about 1/8 of an inch. Some people like to give even more. So, you can leave 1/4 of an inch if you want. It lets that pretty paper or fabric that you put on the front show. And this time we're just putting it directly on the backing paper. And you will see here that as I glue this, because I'm putting moisture on one side of the paper only, that my paper is going to want to curl. Now, if I wasn't using cardstock and I was using just real thin paper, it would curl even worse and it would be much more difficult to handle. When you get down to that last corner, you just kind of have to use your fingernail to hold it down. Make sure you have a nice even coat. You don't want it real thick. You don't want gobs of glue. You don't want puddles of glue. You just want a nice even coating. You can actually see the brush marks across there. I wipe the cover off to make sure I don't have any little pieces of glue or fiber or paper cuttings. You don't want to have anything on that cover because once you put that cover sheet on, if there's anything underneath of it, kind of like the pee under the mattress, if there's anything under there, it's going to show through. So you want that to be nice and flat. So before you put that down, because once you stick that glue down, it sticks. Make sure you don't have any little dust remnants or crafty remnants that are laying on your cardboard before you stick that down on there. And that just gives it the beautiful finishing touch. And who would know, right, that underneath of this beautiful paper is a cereal box that I took off the counter this morning after my husband had breakfast. I just love the colors of this. That kind of deep autumn burgundy on the inside, I think just really complements all those beautiful fall colors on the other side. And I'm just excited about putting this together. So we learned about pages. We learned how pages make signatures. We learned how to mark those signatures. And we learned how to take a cardboard cereal box and turn it into a beautiful book cover. And so here we have it. I have my front and my back, and I don't know which one's going to be front and back because both of them are gorgeous. But thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I just don't know which one I'm going to use or which direction because they're both beautiful, but I hope that you'll come back for part 2. And in part 2, I will show how to bind all of this together in order to make a little handmade journal. If you like this video, please do go ahead and push that like button. And I hope that you'll come back in part 2 where I will take all of these pieces that we worked on today and I will be binding those together so that we'll have a nice binding along this edge, and then we'll have a little handmade recycled book. So press like and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.